Hi there. Thank you for tuning in and for sending your questions. I'm Dr. Clelia Lima, nurse practitioner with a passion for wellness. And today our topic is something that I have received so many questions about it because it's so fascinating. It's about the impact of intermittent fasting in your brain. How does it work? Is it something that we should be happy about? Is this something, innovative? We'll talk about the brain. And also, we're going to talk about how your gut bacteria, your microbial flora in your gut has to do with your brain function. That's going to be very interesting. You can send your questions on the chat. Some of you have sent the questions in advance already. Thank you. And if you want to send the questions later, we will include in our live next week, or we can, chat as well. So let's talk about the brain. The brain is a very complex organ. It has so many activities and it's a very alive, function all the time. That's how we live, right? So when you think about the brain it functioning 24/7 all the time. In the past was thought that the brain had a rest when we sleep. But, the latest research, shows that the brain is very active even when you sleep. And to promote this activity, the brain needs a lot of energy. It needs a very huge amount of energy for all the brain functions. And interesting enough, the brain doesn't have much storages of energy. It depends on a constant flow of receiving the blood, supply to, to to feed the brain. And the main source of energy is glucose, sugar. The brain needs glucose to process all the functions. And actually, the central nervous system has a little bit of storage, but mainly it needs the constant flow of sugar. So when the glucose levels go too low, it's dangerous because the brain cannot function. But when we're going to talk about intermittent fasting, it's going to be in a different way. So we'll get there. So I had a question here. Okay, so when the body switches the energy from glucose to fatty acids, how low the levels of glucose is going to be for that to happen. So I'm going to show you a study that was published by the NIH, the National Institute of Health. It's a very recent study, was published in September 2021, and it was about the intermittent fasting and the cognitive function. A lot of studies have been showing benefit of intermittent fasting in brain function, but it's still a lot to understand about how the whole process works. So I was very excited to see this recent study because it's a large study and very comprehensive, actually very scientific. It's kind of difficult to digest the whole information. But the whole thing it has to do with being very humble to draw conclusions because there are so many different ways to do intermittent fasting. So just this is such a broad term, and they were very right to the point to say depends on which kind of intermittent fasting you do could have a different result. And so, yeah, we have to be very mindful about that too. They define 3 different kinds of intermittent fasting. And I'm going to tell you all 3 of them. The first one is time restricted eating. When you have a window of time, we spoke a little bit about that, in past podcast. And it could be, 6 hours restricted eating, 8 hours, 12. So, varies. So the result may vary as well. And also, not only how many hours is your window of eating, which is going to be, translated in how many hours of fasting, but what time of the day that window is located. So if you're doing 8 hours from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, is different than you're doing from 12 o'clock until 8 o'clock in the evening. Um, I want to say that it's better to do your window later during the day because of the insulin that is more is higher in the morning. And then if you are in the fasting period, it's going to be more controlled when you eat. But you know what, depends on your lifestyle. If it's more convenient for you to do your window earlier, you have to do what works for you, because we're not talking about doing intermittent fasting just to lose some weight or to get some whatever result you want, and then go back eating all the junk and all the unhealthy foods. We're talking about lifestyle is long term, it's lifetime. So it has to be something that you feel comfortable and you feel happy about. You have to um, it has to be easy and you have to feel well doing that. So saying that whatever works for you, the window or the kind of intermittent fasting, as long as you're doing it. And that's one of the things that this study was showing, that all the amazing results that they saw, they were like, is it because of intermittent fasting or because people do intermittent fasting, they have a clean diet, they eat better quality of food, they are mindful about what they put in their bodies? Could be. But you know what? For me, this is what I call the ripple effect. When you do one change to do something good for your health, it will translate in other changes that you're just gonna do it because you are seeing results. You are seeing how much better you feel, and then you just do one more and one more, in the little habits that we keep adding on, has a big difference in the overall health. So it's true, people doing intermittent fasting usually, even the days that they have they eat whatever they want are healthy choices. At least that's what I have seen, and that's what I do too. So the first one that the research talked about was the eating time, the different times. The other one they referred to was alternate days fasting. In this one, you you fast one day and you eat whatever free diet the next day. So you alternate. One day you fast, the next day you don't, and then you go um, for whatever time. The third one that they said in the research was the 5-2 diet. They call the periodic fasting. In that one, 2 days a week you have the restricted eating, and 5 days a week you have a normal diet. Uh, Personally, I suggest the other way around. I suggest that you do the 5 days restricted eating and 2 days um, free. But this one here was the other way around, 5-2. So basically, throughout history, the human race uh, functioned in the alternating food um, in scarcity. So they had to accumulate the fat and the fat tissues for when they didn't have availability of food, they could draw on those resources for energy and for survival. But now we have food available all the time, and we don't think about switching the processes because we just have the food. But it is necessary that we be mindful about eating too much too frequently. We are not doing any good to our health. So the other question that came in is a question that I hear a lot. How many hours of fasting is necessary to trigger the metabolic switch from glucose to fatty acids, basically burning fat? That's a question of $1 million. Depends. Depends on how much glucogen you have stored in your liver. And that depends on the kind of food you ate prior to fasting. So that's why we recommend that you eat healthy foods when you are, eating your normal day, because then you're going to be promoting um, a better switch of the metabolism. So that switch can happen in 12 hours, in 36 hours. So it also depends on your activity. So if you are exercising, if you are active and moving around on the hours that you are fasting, you're going to be switching from glucose to fatty acids faster. So, and also when you continue to practice intermittent fasting, you're gonna start, switching to fatty acids, which is the lipids source of energy, in less hours. So it's very fascinating how your body just learn how to do that dance. It's really amazing. And also it gets to be it's like a cascade, the metabolism that is promoted from switching to a different source of energy in our body. It's just fascinating. It has to do with the circadian cycle as well. Remember we had some talks about the circadian cycle and your sleep and all of that. Your body produces different kind of hormones in different times of the day. So if you are eating close to the time to go to sleep, you are disrupting this circadian cycle, because we have this biological clock inside of us. And if we are not in sync, we are disrupting very different kinds of processes in our bodies. So it's very important that we, get back in sync. And intermittent fasting helps to realign our circadian clock as well. So, what our gut bacteria has to do with our brain? It has a lot to do with our brain. Actually, the microbial flora that we have in our gut, basically our intestines system, has to do with the messages that it's an axis, that goes in the gut brain, called the gut brain axis, because we have neurons in our the digestive system, and it sends message to the brain. And then you have that communication, and the better, the more the healthier our gut microbiome is. It has to do with the diversity of the microbiome. The more you're going to have this communication with the brain neurons. And we know if we eat something that is not very agreeable, we're going to have gases, you're going to have sometimes diarrhea, and you have the brain fog. Depends on what you eat, you cannot function well. It has a scientific explanation behind it. Our gastrointestinal flora has trillions of microbials, and they can be bacteria, fungus, virus. They have all kinds, and those they are colonized. We have microorganisms in other parts of our bodies too, but most of them are in our gut. So the more diverse we have our microbia, the healthier it is. Not only to process our digestion when we eat, but for other functions that has to do with our immune system as well. So it's between the enteric nervous system that they communicate, the gastric and the central nervous system. So we have all this communication. The enteric, it means gastric, right? They have this communication with the central nervous system. It has to do with all the term, the vagus nerve and all of that, but that's too much detail. So um, this research was so rich. It talked about how the diet that we are used to eat with all the processed foods, they have all this disturbance on the balance of our microbiome. So it has to do with uh, stress, anxiety, depression. It's all, they all intercommunicated. And also research has shown that a neuro dysfunction like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, neuromuscular disease, they also can benefit from a better function of the bile from our gut, in our brain. Naturally, lots of studies still to do about that. And it's very sad to see the science being so advanced. And for those diseases that millions of people suffer, there is no there's no treatment that can be successful for remission. We kind of treat the symptoms, help a little bit, but it's not nothing to cure. But there is a lot of promise from understanding how our brain is connected with our whole body system, and that it could come some breakthrough research that find the cure. Yeah, that would be an amazing thing to see. So the last thing I want to talk about, two things I want to talk a little bit is about how the brain receiving this switch, from glucose to ketones, it promotes cell regeneration. It's just very fascinating how the ketones, they can uh, penetrate the brain barrier, and the way they function is different than the energy from glucose. And the message that is sent is for regeneration of the cells. And it's like, it has to do with the autophagy. Like some cells, they're already old, they're already not functioning well, they're damaged, and they're just hanging there. So when this process, of ketones start, being part of the metabolism in the brain, it promotes the cell regeneration. And together is the other part that I want to talk about, because it promotes the growth hormone. Several hormones are involved in this, but I'm just focused on this one today. It has to do with the neuroplasticity. In the past, we heard that the brain damage is irreversible. You cannot grow new cells. But the latest research shows that the neuroplasticity is a reality. Our brain is very capable of regenerating cells, brain cells, and promoting new pathways in our network. And it's just the neuroplasticity that has to do with how the connections and in the response from new information, not only from damage, but new information. You can process new pathways, and that's just fascinating. Um, so it has to do with the catabolic process and the anabolic process. So it's very intrinsic how they relate and improve the cognitive function, and also not only improve the cognitive function, but uh, promote the prevention of the brain related disorders. So the intermittent fasting has a potential to help with many of the brain dysfunction that we still, have a lot to learn about. So the last thing that I think is so fascinating in this topic is to do with the growth hormone. Several hormones are, involved in the whole process of the intermittent fasting. And remember, there's several kinds of intermittent fasting and how they affect your brain function. And the growth hormone that before we just thought about, okay, for kids, they need the growth hormone to grow up as an adult and to, just for growth. But we know that the growth hormone has to do with the cell regeneration as well. So when we have all this process switching from glucose to fatty acids, lipids and ketones for energy, it promotes autophage, que é what is the whole process of renewing the cells, because you're getting rid of the old ones. And then that's also connected with the growth hormone, because then you're going to have new processes with the growth hormone, and that has to do with your brain cells and your brain function. So that's pretty much a scientific explanation how most people, when they do intermittent fasting the proper way, they feel better focus, better energy, because you are promoting all these metabolic changes in your body. But just remember, you have to find something that you feel happy about. It has to be something that you are excited, that it's a lifestyle, and that you see benefit. And remember that any diet, you should have medical advice before you start one, especially if you take medication. It's very important that you check with your doctor. If your healthcare provider is not experienced intermittent fasting, and some are not, you can find one that understand intermittent fasting and can guide you. If you are in Florida, I can help you, and I'll be happy to do a consultation for you. But make sure that you seek medical advice, because every case is very unique, and you want to make sure that you have a plan that is tailored to your needs, because you are very important and you want to take care of your health properly. Okay, that's all for today. See you next Tuesday for another live Q&A. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, and share with your friends. Keep moving towards your best self. Be healthy and feel well.